On the east coast of Florida, we don't get as much storm surge as on the Gulf Coast. The storm surge is driven by a lot of things, but a key component is how shallow the floor underneath of the water, underneath of the Gulf, underneath the ocean is offshore. And on the East Coast, we have a big shelf not too far offshore. So what that does is that pushes the energy that's coming from the ocean toward the land up, so we get bigger waves. So on the Gulf Coast, you get higher water pushing farther inland. On the East Coast, you get higher waves. So along the southeast coast of Florida here, we can get a storm surge of like 10 feet. In 1926, the water came over Miami Beach, completely over Miami Beach, and the ocean met the bay. And obviously that was this giant hurricane. So a big hurricane, like in 1926, Ian was a medium big hurricane. These bigger size hurricanes like Katrina was a big hurricane across, produced tremendous storm surge. So we can get it here. Now, the issue is predicting it in advance, because the storm surge is extremely dependent on exactly where the strongest winds are. But Mary's got to order evacuations, what, 48 hours-ish? Is it 48? You know, or you're going to talk about them, start talking about them in that time frame anyway, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it all depends on the time of day the storm is coming in as well.
Because you don't want them evacuated in the middle of the night.
During the daylight. Correct.
Right, you want them doing it during the day. Right, so you have to do this in advance. Well, in advance, we don't know precisely where the storm is. So the National Hurricane Center is taking into account the uncertainty in the size of the storm, in the intensity of the storm, in the angle that it's approaching the coast, because all these affect where the maximum storm surge is. And so they issue hurricane warnings and storm surge warnings for larger areas than end up getting it, just because even though they're the best in the world at what they do, we can't make precise forecasts 2, 3, 4 days in advance. We all know that, right? So that means that we have to over-evacuate by just the way the system works, because it takes time to get people to safety. So storm surge is a giant, complicated problem, and now in the modern world that we have so many people and so much wealth and so many things that are at risk if the ocean water rises and pushes into Lake Worth and pushes up the canals and pushes ocean water inland. It's a huge difficult problem that we haven't dealt with here in Southeast Florida in a long time. Right? I mean, really, here in Palm Beach County, the two benchmark storms are 1928 and 1949, right? Those are the benchmark storms, right? But Palm Beach County, there's film of downtown West Palm Beach flooding in the 1926 Great Miami Hurricane. That was such a giant storm, back when we used to have these giant storms, like Irma, actually, but it came from a different angle. So storm surge we live in a storm surge zone here, and we have to behave like we understand that, even though it's very, very complicated. Let me just say one. I just wrote a big post this morning, by the way. If you go on my Facebook page, you can read it about the evacuations and all that. One of the, I think, and I'd be interested in both of you guys' take on this, is high rises. So the high rises we build here, as Kevin said, the modern ones are built like battleships. They're not going to fall down in any kind of hurricane. But if you're in one and you're near the coast and the storm surge comes in, and let's say you do the right thing and you go down to the second or third floor in the hallway and ride it out there. Nobody should stay in their apartment during a storm surge in a high rise. But second or third hallway, you're going to be fine, except that there's going to be debris. You're not going to be able to get out of your building. There's going to be no power, no water, maybe no communications. And you're stuck in your building. And until you guys can go and clean it up, right, and get access. So that, I think, is an undiscussed issue, because people feel safe in these modern buildings. They can't hardly open the sliding glass door. It's like a bank vault, but they feel safe, but they can get stranded.